Welcome to the 359. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I'm Alfred Eng.
It seems that the new cause of the day is calling to break up Facebook. Two of the latest prominent figures to jump on this bandwagon are Facebook co-founder Chris Hughes and president candidate Kamala Harris. Let's step back for a second here and ask, Alfred, what are some of the reasons offered to break up this company?
I mean, the biggest reason a lot of people have been arguing is Facebook is way too big for its own good. There's issues with them owning Instagram and WhatsApp. A lot of people, I've always seen these Facebook statuses where I'm leaving Facebook, but you can still find me on Instagram. And it's kind of like they're
You're
both
still
owned
on
by the
Facebook.
same company, and it's frustrating. You might be going from drinking, soda to diet soda, but at the end of the day, it's like all your money is still going to them.
Right. So there's this huge concern that they are like a monopoly in social networking.
Yeah.
What exactly? Like, what are their competitors? You got Twitter, you got Snapchat, but yeah, you're right. Like the other ones
It's
are
interesting.
much smaller.
So Facebook, in their defense, has said that they are not a monopoly, but not because, and they don't say Twitter is Snapchat or Snapchat as competitors, though. They say they're competing with Google and Amazon, which are not social networks. So it's interesting that that's what Facebook views as its competitors. Anytime they mention, there are, the average person has about 10 different apps on their phones, and like Facebook is only one of them or something like that. The problem is that they always ignore the fact that, there's Facebook, then there's the Instagram app, then there's the WhatsApp app, then there is Facebook Messenger. Then if you really want to get into it, there's also like Facebook Lite if you don't want to use the Facebook app. So they might not be a monopoly in the sense of, Facebook itself, but like I think that's why there's a call to break it up. There's so many things that Facebook owns that even though the average person has 10 apps on their devices, like half of those are from Facebook.
All right, but let's think about this. What is really the likelihood that anything even close to that would actually happen?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, like GE broke up, and I think
AT&T broke up.
Yeah, I think they're trying to make that kind of argument for Facebook now. I don't know why they point to Google and Amazon as their competitors, but
probably from digital advertising,
Yeah.
I would say. So we'll see if that happens next. And this could be really significant. The U.S. Supreme Court this morning said an antitrust case can move forward against Apple. The suit claims that Apple's total control of the App Store is forcing prices higher since the company takes a 30% cut on app sales, costing customers more money. A win for the plaintiff could potentially open up iOS to allow more app stores or direct app sales to iPhone users. Yeah, that sounds pretty big.
Yeah, a part of this for Apple is also a security concern too. I mean, there's a
Totally.
reason why they keep it limited to the App Store. They guard that a lot. They make sure that there's no malicious apps getting on there, and they've done a pretty good job at that. I mean, that's why they have that reputation versus Google Play, where it's much easier to get on. That being said, though, the Google Play Store also takes a cut of anything that goes onto its App Store. That's why you can't download Fortnite from the Google Play Store. But yeah, it's interesting to see this case moving on. And yeah, like you said, if it gets decided that Apple can't be doing what it's doing currently, I mean, one, there's going to be an issue of security, but your apps could also be cheaper.
Yeah, and we'll see if that has any direct impact on what we were just talking about with Facebook, where consumers would be able to sue for regulatory changes. Mm-hmm. Last, Google is another company that's weathering calls to break up. Amid this blowback, our own Richard Nieva sat down with Google's ad chief to discuss user privacy. Alfred, what was a quick takeaway from this?
Big thing that stuck out to me was Google's head of advertising was arguing about why all these privacy settings are not on by default.
Yeah, and saying that was a good thing.
Yeah, which is research has shown that is not true. Like most people, when they get a browser or anything like that, they usually use the default settings. Like unless you know about privacy settings, because there's a good chance you're not even going to change it. They mentioned that there had been about 2 billion visits this year to its privacy settings, but only about 20 million people actually changed it. So yeah, he's making this argument like Google's doing all these things to add privacy settings. But the problem is
they don't make it very
not
easy to find. Yeah, I agree.
They're somewhat easy to find, but they're not on by default. So it's kind of like unless you go and do that on your own, which most people don't do. Like these privacy settings are really only there in name only.
Either way, we're out of time. If you want to read more about these stories, check them out on CNET. By the way, Game of Thrones Season 8 is very good, and you're all a bunch of complainers. I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
I can't believe you said that. I'm Alfred Eng.
Thanks for listening.
the hell was that at the end there?
Hey,
Yeah, I don't. What is wrong with you?
I had to throw that in
What's
there.
with the
You
side
didn't have to
swipe?
do any of that.
I wanted to. I got mad.
They're
Over
not
what?
even paying us.
Game of Thrones?
No.
No, it's a different company.
Yeah. So why? What are you doing?
Oh, all right. So you don't even watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but I know it's bad.
All right.
I'm not letting this go. What was the context of that?
People were complaining like crazy on Twitter over the last episode. I should not go on Twitter after
Where
after
everybody dies? And by the way, that's not a spoiler. That's every episode of
That is
Game of
every
Thrones, and
episode.
I don't even watch the show.
I have liked season 8, so I felt compelled to say something. So obviously I'm getting some blowback here, but I stand by what I said.
Well, good news is Michael Brown is on your side, so we'll take that.
Yes.
Anyways,
Thank you,
anybody,
Michael.
Go ahead, send in your comments and questions about the topics. I know it's a real hot button one, but let's keep a level head. How are you now? Just keep it chill. Michael Brown says break him up. New York Fly says it's a trap. A name that I can't pronounce because it appears to either be upside down or in Arabic. I'm not entirely sure. Says Facebook is useless. Stop online censorship. Tammy Thompson says break up Facebook. Get off all social media. It's a trap. Users should be able to sue for their data, and people should not be able to profit from user information on a free service. So we're off to a good start.
Wow. Okay, so yeah, that is a lot of the early commentary from our chat, but unfortunately, I would say that breaking up any company is an extreme position that very infrequently happens. So the AT&T breakup happened in the 70s. This is just not something that regulators or the government tends to do with any, they don't do it willy-nilly. So I continue to be skeptical that something like that would happen. My expectation would be that there would probably be a little bit more regulation, a little bit more guardrails around a company like Facebook. I think that they've proven time and time again that they've been incredibly lax with user privacy. So some sort of regulatory framework or fines related to like all of these problems that have surfaced, I would expect something like that would come up much more likely.
No rebuttal from Alfred. That's unique.
I think he agrees completely. Or he's still mad about the Game of Thrones thing, which I apologize.
Anyways, let's move on. Michael Brown says, in all seriousness, I don't know how different things would be. What would stop Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp from just creating an agreement once they are split up?
Oh,
So
no.
what was the question?
What would happen, like, wouldn't Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, like, just end up working together even if they were breaking up?
I don't think that's true. I mean, I think that's kind of what Facebook is trying to do now to make sure that if there were attempts to break it up, it would be too difficult. I mean, there's the reason why Mark Zuckerberg talks about, we're going to make it so that you can message everybody from like Instagram. Like you don't have to have a Facebook account to use Messenger. And they'll want to integrate that with like WhatsApp as well, where they want to get to that point where it's like, we have to work together even if we are broken up, so that it's not all like separate entities. But they're also packaging in a way that to you you'll just think, oh yeah, that makes it so much more convenient for me. I don't know. I really do think Facebook does have ulterior motives here with that, but it is gonna be more convenient for you once they're all together like that, but it also will be harder to break them up.
If you were betting on this, would you have an expectation as far as what would get broken off of Facebook? Like, would it be both or
Instagram.
one? You think Instagram? I agree
Just
with
because
you.
it's like way too much for Facebook and Instagram to have this like dominance over like social media. That is something that can actually be like argued for. I assume like WhatsApp might be a little bit harder, but I think they could argue that like these two social networks together.
It's pretty incredible that Facebook was actually trying to buy Snapchat before Snapchat went public for like $3 billion.
I do wonder though that had they bought Snapchat, would there be a bigger case for breaking up Facebook?
That's a great hypothetical, and I would think that the answer would be yes. Like the effort to try to break up the company might be even more intensified by the fact that they would also own Snapchat. Yeah.
Matthew Datcher says, I wish I could break up Facebook just so I wouldn't feel guilty for wanting to buy an Oculus. Here's another note that I just thought was relevant. The fact that you can't keep anything private. The fact is you can't keep anything private on large networks. It's almost impossible. I think we're seeing the truth of that right now. It's not like it was a secret or anything that we couldn't have expected, but you think we are just kind of like too big for our britches? It's too late for any of these networks at this point?
Well, okay, so that's what's interesting about bringing up the Supreme Court case during this conversation. So there's a lot of, the sky is falling concern about that these companies got way too big. Now the only solution is to break them up. I think the Supreme Court case is very telling. The plaintiffs, this directly stems from consumers. This isn't app developers. And if for whatever reason this were to actually move forward and consumers were to actually win in a Supreme Court case against Apple, I think, you'd probably end up seeing more of these types of cases.
Yeah, I would just say that the Apple case is a little bit different because they have to buy these apps. Like Facebook is a little bit different because it's a free service, but you're paying with your data.
Yeah.
So it's not like
That's
they
a
can
good
say
point.
we're being this is an unfair trade practice or something like that. I mean, you can make the argument that it is that you don't want to give up that data, but a lot of the times Facebook will just say, you don't have to use our services.
Yeah, that's a good point. Money is not trading hands with consumers when it comes to Facebook or Gmail. So, yeah, the argument would have to be pretty different in that regard.
But I would also argue, I mean, there was the point that Brian made earlier about how there's nothing private online. You can't really be private on a large network. Yeah, that's the unfortunate way that our internet economy works. I think honestly, if the internet were built up from the ground today, we wouldn't be doing any of this stuff. There would be other ways of making money while being online. But unfortunately, I think people got so used to everything being free that that's just how it is now. If there was a service that was almost identical to Facebook and all your friends were on it and it offered privacy, but you had to pay, I don't know, $3-4 a month, I don't think it would be successful. I don't think people would go on that.
No, not anymore. I remember very early days of WhatsApp, they did charge you, it wasn't $1 a month. I think it was something ridiculous, $1 a year. But Facebook got rid of it.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you that even something like an extremely low subscription, something like that, Facebook realized that was hampering the opportunity for them to expand even more. So that's a really good point. And people are really used to getting a lot of stuff for free online, and that's just how it is these days.
Let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Michael Brown does point out that we did have a solid competitor for Facebook, yet we did not give it a fair fighting chance. If anybody remembers, Google Plus. His argument is valid.
I know, Michael.
Did I use Google
Michael,
Plus?
I
No.
know that you're a big Google Plus fan.
Yeah.
So,
And I like that you're just going right back to the privacy concern. You're not giving any data to Facebook now. You're giving that data to
you're giving even
Google.
more to Google.
I wouldn't say that they were a solid competitor by any means of it. And I also I don't think that this whole fair shot thing, I don't really know where that's coming from either. But yeah, I mean, they did not work well, and people didn't want to use it, and it died out.
There were some nice features to it. I thought the layout was interesting. Ultimately, it's really hard to create a social network from scratch.
Yeah.
Twitter knows that. Snapchat knows that. Google Plus Google definitely tried to push it for a really long time. My central concern with that is that it's one of those things where for these big tech companies, the only time that you could really see a major competitor coming up from them is another big tech company. So Facebook's complaining that their competitors are like Amazon and Google. It's okay, well, what about medium or even smaller players?
Well, that's the league
not
you
really
guys
in
play in.
Also, Google Plus just came at a weird time. They came at a time when Facebook was still doing pretty hot. And I remember when Google Plus was coming up, a lot of people were just saying, I don't want to switch to another social network and have to add everybody again and do all this stuff. I mean, maybe now it might have been better with all these people that wanted to leave Facebook, but at that time, Google Plus was coming in when Facebook was doing really hot.
Are you arguing that we should have a new Google Plus?
No, but I'm saying the timing was pretty bad for them then, and it's good timing now for another social network because people are so sick of being on Facebook. The problem is that
time has passed. Yeah.
Chances are Facebook will probably just buy whatever that new social network is,
Hopefully
which is what
not.
happened with Instagram. Instagram was coming up and it was getting real hot, and Facebook just bought them because I think they kind of predicted that people would be moving on to Instagram after.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, Alfred. It's like the pain in the ass that it is when you have to change your number for whatever reason. Then you have to like sync all the contacts and let everyone know all over again. Tammy says though, people are just on board to use whatever platform all their friends are already on. So right now it's just like a sales pitch to try to get somebody to move with you to another platform. I think Michael Brown's point though was that we have dug our own grave. We had opportunities to not let Facebook become a monopoly, but we shat all over them so that we'll never see that kind of opportunity again. That being said, Eric says, bring back MySpace.
I also don't think now is really a good time for any social networks. I think people like Facebook has really like embodied that. And like, think about all the people that are leaving Facebook or don't use Facebook. Like, you talk to somebody and they say, yeah, I have a Facebook, but I haven't posted on it in months, or like, I haven't like, talked to anybody on Facebook. I just use it for events, etc. That's really like, people are moving to messenger apps. They're like just talking with their friends, just like in a group chat or like one-on-one or anything like that. Like the whole like uploading photos and then having people like it and all that stuff, that's for Instagram too. And like, that's not even that much of a social, like posting statuses is like not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And obviously in my own life, anecdotally, I've seen the exact same thing. Yeah. However, you don't really see that come up in any of the metrics that Facebook provides during their financial earnings. Like, the numbers are always going up.
Yeah, but
like,
they're
people
talking
complain
about
Facebook.
They're not talking about like
the
many
actual
posts are coming,
engagement,
like engagement, all that stuff. Like, yeah, they can have new users who just want it for like events or Messenger or anything like that, but not like for like posting stat, like what a traditional social network is used for.
Sure, but ultimately, if you've got your daily active user going up, I don't think Facebook cares. Like, if you're just using it for events, you're still going on the website all the time. They're serving you ads.
My point is that like no one is gonna go like join another social network. If something new popped up, they're not gonna join that because of that. It's like all these events and stuff are happening on Facebook.
Regrettably, the one that was really different was Snapchat, and Facebook stole their playbook.
Yeah.
Like none of that was patentable, and Facebook just folded it into Facebook. They folded it into Instagram. I think WhatsApp even has stories now. So, unfortunately, it's really difficult to come at somebody like Facebook at this point.
I believe in Harvey Dent, man. You either die the hero or live long enough to become the villain. Every single social network has put itself in the grave in some sense. Yes, we know Facebook is still fiscally successful, but it's also kind of this like barren wasteland of hatred. That was their falling out, as opposed to MySpace, which had too much glitter and crappy songs on it. So like, yeah, everybody's got their own problems.
Didn't MySpace get killed by
Facebook?
Fox bought it, didn't they?
Yeah, but like,
killed,
didn't they?
Like, it's still active. Like, it's still a website.
Didn't they lose all their data? I feel like
they lost like a certain amount of data during a transfer protocol that it was mostly like songs and photos and all that stuff of like all these like dead accounts to begin with. But apparently they found it again on like an Internet Archive like site.
It's like when you found your old Bitcoin. Good job, MySpace.
I mean, there are alternatives out there. Let's be serious for a second. It's hard to justify them because that would be a mass migration. This is a good conversation, everybody. Thanks for keeping it civil. Thanks for keeping it interesting. I will go ahead and dive into the negative, though. Our wallop making Alfred look like the eternal optimist today. Facebook should be broken up, but whomever would buy it would still screw us over without data regulations.
Oh, man. That
True.
Is pretty accurate.
Yeah, that's
well
the
done.
state of our internet. Everything sucks.
Wow. Yeah. Things are terrible.
There's three truths in the world. Death, taxes, and Facebook sucks. Channing Che says, if Google's Play Store takes the same 30% cut as Apple, why is Apple receiving so much heat? It can't just be because of Apple Music. That mainly affects Spotify as a competitor, right?
Mostly because there's a lot more free apps on the Google Play Store. Because Google's much more liberal about what can get into its Play Store. Part of that poses a security and privacy risk for the Google Play Store. They've actually gotten a lot better at detecting like malware being hidden in apps. But yeah, most of the apps on Google Play Store are free because they expect Android users come to expect things being cheaper. And they make their money off of advertising on those free apps instead. Whereas on the Play Store, there's a lot of apps that you have to pay for there. And that's why these consumers are bringing this lawsuit there.
Oh, the App Store, you mean?
Yes, the App Store. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was also under the impression, correct me if I'm wrong here, that there are alternatives to the Play Store because Android is so fragmented that, especially in China, there are a variety of
Yeah.
app stores.
Yeah.
So you can't make a monopoly argument about Android
Yeah.
the same way that you would.
And there's different app stores, like you said, for the Google Android system.
Whereas there really isn't one for iOS.
Yeah.
It's that's it. That's the App Store, which is why it's actually really interesting that this is coming from consumers as opposed to developers. Spotify thing is a really interesting other example that Spotify is arguing that.
Doesn't Amazon have its own app store too?
They do have their own App Store, which is a forked version within Android. It's so different than Android that, it's kind of its own thing.
Yeah. But like that would never happen on iOS.
Exactly. Yeah. They wouldn't even be able to know how to do it. So, yeah.
Peter says, hiding in plain sight, the oversaturation of social media means no one actually cares about anyone else anymore. That's somewhat ironic. He goes on to say, in my best Rick Sanchez voice, none of this matters, nobody cares. He's got a point.
Nice Rick Sanchez reference.
Leslie also says there will be an uproar if Facebook is demolished from the Millennium Kids. Now, you got a couple Millennium Kids in the house here. Alfred, do you think that would really be the case?
No. Millennials don't care about, like, are you saying millennials or millennium kids? Because millennium
I think
kids
that's what
are
she's
Gen Z
inferring,
kids.
or he's inferring.
Huh?
I think that's what they are inferring.
Okay.
Gen Z? You're Gen Z.
Yeah, I'm off by like 2 years. But yeah,
Close
they
enough.
don't care
For it.
about Facebook. Facebook
I'm
is for
knighting
old
you
parents and
honorary
teachers.
millennial.
Yeah, like Facebook is for like teachers and parents now.
Dude, me and my wife are on Facebook, and she's a teacher. You're totally right.
Yeah.
And I'm an old parent.
And yeah, like you don't want to be on Facebook. Like your family's gonna add you, and it's like you can't post any cool stuff. Like I can't post any photos of the drugs that I take, or because my parents are on it. That's why you go on like Instagram or Snapchat for that kind of stuff, or like messaging apps.
Until they chase
First
you there.
of all, if you're gonna share such dumb nonsense, like I don't know, just message people. Do not put it on Instagram, for God's sakes.
But my point is that like I don't think any young people care if Facebook went away. They would care if Instagram went away.
I hear what you're saying, and I think on a surface level that's true. The thing is that Facebook is so deeply embedded into the internet in so many different ways. It's used for logins. It's like every single news publisher has like a little Facebook widget.
But they have that because it helps with Facebook like traffic.
Right. Yeah. No, it does, but at the same time,
Every single
I just
publisher
think that,
had a little Google Plus widget for a while too.
It's true. We had one
So-
too. Now it's no longer
Yeah.
there. I just think it would be a pretty massive undertaking to actually somehow uproot Facebook from the internet.
Yeah.
And I hear what you're
I'm
saying.
just answering the question that I
Yeah.
don't think millennials would care.
No, I'm with Alfred on this one. If anything, the millennials are some of the quickest early adopters sometimes, and bad tastes at that, to just quickly move on to the next new cool hip thing.
Like I'm not
We'll
gonna
always be on the internet, but could we care less about if it's Facebook or not? Probably not.
I'm not gonna be able to see crappy photos of my uncle's garden anymore. I'm sorry. No.
Oh my God.
Alfred, shut up. Your uncle's garden is lovely.
Alfred's here to make kills. Do it.
All right, we got just enough time for a couple more. Scott has a really good one. Could Facebook create a different company and branch out the same way like Google did with Alphabet?
I feel like they already did that. They just didn't do like the naming.
They didn't, yeah.
They didn't
Which,
do that.
thank
Like,
you, by the way, because that was really annoying.
it's
every
the only
time.
thing I like about your company. Yeah, Alphabet's a really annoying naming structure, especially for reporters, because you have to say Google's parent company.
Yeah, because
Alphabet.
we know it's Google. Like,
Yeah,
how to
not
make
only
things.
that, but like 90% of their money, if not more than that, comes from Google.
Yeah.
So like you don't really have other businesses. Those are all just like moonshots or other projects. Other than Waymo, I guess there are a couple of other ones in there, but yeah, Facebook is still like somebody was saying in the chat. Facebook owns Oculus, like so they're a tech conglomerate. Amazon is the same way. Amazon could have relabeled themselves too because they own all sorts of things. They own a shipping logistics company. They own an e-commerce website. They own a cloud computing site. They have a Hollywood studio. Like these companies are massive and they're into a bunch of different businesses.
All right, couple of closing thoughts here. Michael Brown says, well, all these great topics, what do you think is the solution? Do you actually think breaking Facebook up would solve the issue, or is it just kind of a moot point? What would your pitch be as a CNET analyst?
You want to go first?
I
can
don't.
go.
I'm not a CNET analyst. But,
I mean, for the purposes of this conversation,
I'm dubbing
I
you
can-
an honorary CNET analyst.
Yeah. I'll okay. Go ahead. Say what you want to
I
say.
mean, yeah, even if they were all broken up, I would make the argument that, things would just be as bad regarding disinformation on Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook. All these issues with privacy would also still be bad. I just think that they would all have like different approaches on how they should tackle them. WhatsApp would probably have the easiest time with like privacy issues. Instagram would still like be falling to a lot of like disinformation efforts. I think the issue is that like with Facebook being one company managing all of it is like a big problem for them, that they can't handle it for all their platforms. Even though they will argue that they can, and they're like developing all these tools for it. So yeah, these problems will still linger despite the fact of breaking them up. But I think the issue is that, Facebook is becoming an extremely powerful company, or if it's not already, and people are trying to make sure that they don't basically dominate how we experience like the internet.
For me, I think for a time, I would have liked to believe that, market forces will ensure the disruption of any major company. Mm-hmm. The problem is with these tech companies, I think people are really coming to realize, a lot of regulators are coming to realize that these companies have really started to dominate their industries to the point where they are really calling the shots in their own little fiefdoms, in their own little sections of the world. So the question is, well, at the very least, should some sort of regulatory framework be created to try to say, okay, if you do the wrong thing, here are some things that we're going to do about it. But I think it's a far cry from breaking up the companies. I think that is a scenario that continues to be unlikely, and I think most people, if you're going to put money down on it, would say like this is a long shot scenario.
Yeah.
That's probably not going to happen. It's interesting that you mentioned too, is that if Facebook for whatever reason owns Snapchat, they would be more vulnerable to break up.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. So anyway,
We have to go back in time and convince Snapchat to sell.
Right, yeah, for like the good of humanity, sell to Facebook. So yeah,
It goes without saying, social media in general is like a hextuple-edged sword. It's annoying and obnoxious, but at the same time, it can help point out jerk faces out there that should be called out on bad business. I'm trying to not
Or
swear
like
if you
bad
can't
takes, like the Game of Thrones, like season 8 is good.
tell. Oh,
you don't even watch the show,
Yeah,
but it's bad.
the whole show is bad.
Okay, well, all right, I can live with that you don't think the show is any good.
what it really whittles down to is we are a terrible species and we should pull the plug on Earth before we have any more social behavior and like anxiety. Thank you for those terms, Tripping in Denver. By the way, Tripping in Denver says, can't we just migrate back to coffee houses and bars? I think that's a great idea because I don't like to go to coffee houses and bars, which means that all the other people will go there and I can even better avoid human contact and social interactions.
I mean, like YouTube is more or less a social network with the comments.
It pretty much is. It is.
Yeah.
Google's
So, are we contributing? Like, I feel like we're contributing to social networking by doing this show, but at the same time, like I often find this to be one of the most civil conversations that I would normally have on the internet.
Like Brian also moderates it. I'm sure there's a lot of comments out there that like.
I mean, there's
not
always
fun.
going to be some troll jerk off in there in the chat, but for the most part, I am sincerely proud and impressed by our continuing recurring audience. I think we weed out a lot of the garbage, so I'm going to
We
thank
should
you
just
all.
go back to internet forums. Like those were great. I mean, Reddit, I would argue, is the closest thing you can get to that. But yeah, like I remember just signing on to forums for like different interests that I had all the time and being able to post anonymously without like any like privacy concerns in mind.
I spent most of my internet career on my hometown's local message board where we
Yeah.
would just post upcoming local punk shows. So
Yeah.
I'll take that back.
Yeah, early days of the internet. It is nice to think about, but that genie is already out of the bottle, unfortunately. So there's no going back
I
to
don't
that.
know. I think people are moving back to that, like forums at least. Like Reddit is a pretty good place for that, especially if you have like specific subreddits that you're interested in. Also, Discord is coming up pretty big,
That's true.
where you don't like have to put like your real name on that.
Okay, yeah.
Well, this conversation will forever be ongoing, but thanks everybody for such great contributions. Today, you are a rose amongst the weeds in the realm that is the awful, awful internet. But we got to go. thanks again for joining us. We will see you back here again tomorrow. Ben, take us on out.
Sure. The 359 is available on iTunes, TuneIn, FeedBurner, Google Play Music, Google Podcasts, the Amazon Echo, and of course, CNET.com. Thanks everybody for your questions, and we'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.